Okay, hi everyone. Welcome. I see that everyone is joining right now. We are going to wait a little few seconds and done. Everyone is here. Welcome. I'm so excited to be here with all of you on this second and final day of Women in Leadership Roles Are Looking to the Present, a event organized and an initiative for Generation Change International. I'm so happy and excited to be honest with all of you of what we are going to hear today. We have amazing female leaders joining us. And if you came if you joined on yesterday's event, which was our first day of this amazing session, you will know that yesterday we had Harry Gedelukian from Engo CSW, Sun Young Yoon, we had Jenny Priest, Safira Rameshwar, and Patricia Kumbakisaka. Yesterday was a blast. That was amazing hearing for those amazing female leaders that are working so hard to change the future with their professionalism and advocacy. Today is not an exception, and we have not five, but six amazing female leaders who are going to tell us why they are leaders. Hasn't been hard, hasn't been easy. We don't know, they do, and that's why they're here. I'm so excited to keep this space to this amazing woman and to highlight the importance and visualize these amazing and empowering women who are leaders in their areas. But before we start, I want to present you all to my co-chair, Shania Osborne, who will be joining me today to help me out in the second and final Data Women's in Leadership Role, a look into the present. Say hi, Shania. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. It is such a pleasure to have you, and I'm so excited to hear from all of you. So thank you for coming and accepting the invitation, and we look forward to this amazing event. Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you, Shania. It's always good to have you here supporting GCIVP. You know, Shania is an amazing social work graduate now, and she has been very busy lately, but she's an amazing coacher, and she's another female leader. So even though she's not part of the panel, I just want you to know that she's another female leader. So today is all about you. It's all about female leaders. It's all about women empowerment. So please take that in consideration and take notes, because today we're gonna hear from some of the biggest female leaders the world has, and it's important for us young generations to take notes on their advices and their vision, so we can take that to our work and keep doing what we do. So before we start, I want to introduce you all to Generation Change International. GCIPP is an intergenerational, intersectional, and multidisciplinary platform created to empower and support young leaders, professionals, and advocates from across the world to enter the international community in an easier and more comfortable way. Generation Change International wants to ensure that every brilliant young mind and every brilliant young voice can have the same opportunity to be heard and to be supported. Doesn't matter where they come from, their race, sexual identity, or ideology. And before we start, I want to give a huge thank to the organizations who are supporting us in this two-day event. ADV Thando Gumede, Baha'i International Community, and CSW New York, Young Leader in Your Professionals Program. And I also want to thank our amazing, brilliant, amazing, and heroes of female leaders that are joining us today, who are our guest speakers. Your work inspires me, and I'm so happy and proud to can keep you on a space where we all can know more about each of you and the amazing work that each of you are doing. So thank you so much for joining us today. So right now, oh, and before we start, please feel free to take the shot to keep question to our speakers, to introduce yourself, and to, if you like, if you want to highlight something that any speaker say, please use it. You're free to use the chat. Now we can start. First, on this second day, we want to give a warm welcome to my dearest friend, Advocate Thando, who is an admitted advocate of the High Court of South Africa, global feminist educator and speaker, founder of award-winning feminist innovation called MTETO, search engine, which aims to use artificial intelligence to fight school-related gender-based violence around the globe. Thando, welcome. How are you?
Thank you so much, Carlos, for that warm introduction. I really appreciate it. How are you doing today?
I'm feeling excited, happy, and a little bit nervous, but you're looking sharp, and we are ready to start this. So the first question I want to make you, Thando, I know that you're an amazing advocate and activist, not just in South Africa, but globally, international. You're what we call a global citizen. But I want to know more about you. So I want you to let us know who is actually Thando Gumede.
So as you mentioned, I'm an advocate of the High Court. For those of you who don't know what an advocate is, it's basically a barrister. So in territories like the United Kingdom, you'd have your solicitors who are attorneys and your barristers who are advocates. So my story really begins when I was a teenager in high school, and I started participating in science competitions. So I actually wanted to be an engineer. I was going to be a professional athlete, and I was going to also have a qualification in engineering. And I remember in 2006, I entered my first science competition, and I was totally in awe at watching these young people creating things from their bare hands. And since then, I never looked back. I unfortunately didn't win that year, but you know, I really set my mind on using innovative thinking to try and change the world. And after that, the years after that, I ended up winning a number of science competitions, both locally and nationally as well. And you know, I looked at things like aerodynamics, to biochemistry, to alternative sources of energy. And during that time, I was also, remember, I'm a South African. And so I grew up at a time when we were transitioning. And unfortunately, the transition has not been successful. And it is why I am who I am today. So unfortunately, I didn't become an athlete, and I didn't study engineering. That's a story for another day. But I did go to law school against my will. And I went to Wits University, which was also against my will. I absolutely hated it. But after some time, I actually became involved in student politics. And I was at that time what I like to call a struggling feminist, because there was no need for me to be a feminist. I grew up in an environment where whatever effort I put in is what I got out as a direct result. I had been, so to speak, cushioned by my experiences in my early years, and my teachers at school seemed to have taken a huge liking to me. So any type of discrimination that would have occurred was kind of buffered by that experience, until I went to university and I really got a taste of what is really happening in the real world. I noticed men wanting to undermine me because I was a woman. I noticed silencing. I also noticed racial segregation in ways that I had slightly noticed when I was young, but were very obvious as we grew older. You know, Black people with Black people, Indian people with Indian people, whites with whites, and every now and again you'd see people of different races mixing together. And I was kind of the person that would, you know, mix with different people. But it was during this time in my early years of university that I really began to become conscientized about the reality of our society. And I also began to marry that with the microaggressions, the reality of the microaggressions that I experienced when I was young, but didn't have the language to articulate that, oh, this is what that was. That made me feel so uncomfortable. So over the years, if I were to summarize, because I mean, I've done a lot and I've dabbled in a lot, I took my natural curiosity, my natural desire to solve problems, married it with my sense of justice, and integrated that with my intersectional experience of being queer, of being Black, of coming from an environment of, not the most privileged of classes. So I married all of these intersections and put it together to try to be someone who is fundamentally an educator. So my responsibility, if I were to kind of find the core, as one of the speakers said yesterday, the core of my existence is to educate. But in my education, I'm very unapologetic because I come from a very hostile environment. I come from one of the most violent societies in the world. It is a miracle that I've made it to this age where my friends have been raped, where my acquaintances have been killed. And so I am unapologetic in calling out the reality of what I believe to be, truth. And the truth is that we are where we are today because of, or substantially because of colonization. Colonization, especially in our context, brought about, whiteness and racism. And a lot of people misunderstand whiteness. Whiteness is just about superiority, emanating from theories, pseudo-scientific theories, and these religious theories that emanated from eugenics and from especially Christianity. And so how we experience our environment, this kind of multi-layered, multifaceted experience of oppression, comes from colonization, and that's just factual. And part of the work that I do and the legacy that I want to leave behind is to make people realize that we are, regardless of our geographical locations around the world, being oppressed by the same system of oppression. The same system that killed George Floyd is the same system that continues to oppress us here in South Africa. And is also the same system that oppresses people in India, or that makes, for instance, women in India whiten their skin at such accelerated or galvanized rates. And so my responsibility is to tell the truth. I'm a seeker of truth, and I tell that truth, and I tell the truth through education. But the ultimate result of that is so that people can understand themselves, where they fit in their positionality, so they can reclaim a power that they already have, but that power has been silenced by the systems of oppression. And ultimately also to unite everyone. We have become so disunited, especially as a feminist movement. And the thing about patriarchy, about white heteropatriarchy, is that it is very consistent. You don't find different forms of white heteropatriarchy. It is always consistent. It is always the same. It always uses the same tools of oppression. Sometimes it is overt, sometimes it is covert. But that's the ultimate difference. It operates the same. Whereas feminism has broken up, you've got factions of womanism, you've got people calling themselves equalists, humanists, and all that does really is to break apart and to fragment something that was meant to empower all marginalized groups and to give back humanity to all human beings that was taken away by demographics that thought that they were superior because of what books told them, who thought that they had a God-ordained right to view themselves as superior, and not only to view themselves as superior, but to kill the spirit of other human beings. And in many instances, to literally kill other human beings who didn't fall in line with the eugenic sense of superiority, who were not heteronormative in their sexual expressions, who perhaps didn't have the same physical abilities, were not of the same superior elitist socioeconomic classes, and of course, who were not men and didn't exemplify masculinity, superior ultra masculinity. And that is the legacy of my work. If I were really to break it down, it is to define the feminism of our time through collaboration and unity, and to decolonize our spaces so that we can reclaim our power and to pursue equity among all human beings.
Amazing, Thando. Great, brilliant. I'm speechless to actually say a response to your amazing work, your amazing leadership, and your amazing background. And I think it's really important every single point that you have made today. And one of the most important that I want to highlight is the division between a fight that has to be mutual. You know, we are all fighting to have equal rights, to have equal justice, to be equal in justice, to have equal opportunities. And it's not right that we go against an enemy who's unified and we are divided by sectors. Because I am a Black woman, then I would just unite with Black women. Because I'm a Black man, I would just unite with Black men. Because I'm white, but I just unite with whites. And that's exactly the problem with our society in advocacy right now. That's the hugest problem. We all have individual goals, yes.
And
but if we reflect that we all share one mutual goal.
Yes,
go ahead.
Yes, yes. And I think that we are doing ourselves a great disservice, because if you look at our sheer numbers as oppressed people, you've got women, you've got queer people of all genders and sexualities, you've got people with disabilities, you've got people of, the working classes. And so, and you've also got BIPOC people as well. And so when you think of the sheer number of that collective demographic, we quite frankly could hold the world ransom. We could shut the entire global economy down to say, we want justice, we want equal pay. And not only do we want equal pay, we want equitable pay. We want access to the resources that enable us to go to school, whether it is sanitary pads and panties, proper sanitation facilities, whether it is making sure that people who are differently abled, people who are, for instance, wheelchair bound, have got access to public spaces in a safe way. And so part of education is telling history in such a way that people realize that they have power and that they've always had power. And that is very important, because systems of oppression make you fear your own power. And systems of oppression also make you feel as though you don't have any power to speak of, and that you have to ask for power from someone else, or for someone else to affirm your existence. And I think if people from the Americas, people from India, people from Europe, people from Australia and New Zealand, all across Africa could unite in understanding that our experiences, while they might be diverse, emanate from the same system of oppression and of thinking and of superiority. And with that, to unite, to galvanize and to catalyze, reclaiming our power and ensuring that we live in an equitable society for every single human being.
Thank you so much, Thando, for that amazing answer. And I think I talk in the name of everyone when I say thank you for your advocacy, thank you for your amazing work, thank you for that professionalism, and thank you for that mind that seeks equality before everything else, because that's exactly what we need: equality, be equal, be the same. We are humans. Yes. We are here. We are the same. Thank you so much, Thando Gumede, Advocate Thando Gumede, for joining us today. It was a truly pleasure to be here with you. Thank you. Next one, we have someone really amazing, another amazing female leader who has been joining us in prior Generation Change International events. She's Representative Attica Scott, who serves in the Kentucky House District 41, where she's on the Education, Elections, Constitutional Amendments, and Intergovernmental Affairs, Judiciary, and Natural Resources and Energy Committees. She served as an English immersion teacher in Taining County, Fujian Province, China in 2015, was an adjunct faculty member at Jefferson Community and Technical College between 2013 and 15, and an adjunct faculty member at Bellarmine University between 2009 and 11. Welcome to my dear Attica Scott. How are you?
Oh, Carlos, I am wonderful, and it's glad to hear that you are excited about this morning, because I am too.
Oh, we are really excited to have you here, Attica. You were one of the first speakers Generation Change International invited to its first event, that was the Generation Change International Conference. And we are really happy and excited to have you here. So I will give you the same welcoming question that I give Thando Gumede. Who is exactly Attica Scott?
I'm a mother. I have two amazing children, my son, Advocate, and my daughter, Ashanti. And my daughter and I were arrested last year together. She was 19 as we were opposing police violence here in our home city of Louisville, Kentucky. So I am someone who believes in being on the front lines for justice. I don't move in fear. And I believe that we must show up and stand up and speak out for one another. That is who I am.
And one of the questions I want to make you, Attica, and this is not an unlisted question, but I think it's really important. I think that it's really important to hear your remarks and opinion about this. And I want to know, what are the challenges facing women in their quest to break the glass ceiling? What's your experience on this, Attica?
Well, that's a really good question. And part of the way that we break the glass ceiling is that we do what we're doing, what you did yesterday, what we're doing today, which is build our collective global power, because glass ceilings exist everywhere. And so women's leadership has moved us through multiple pandemics of COVID-19, global violence, and violence against people of different ethnicities, including our Asian siblings right here in the United States, as well as police violence. So in order to break all of those glass ceilings that exist everywhere, that means that many of us have to continue to emerge with an even stronger commitment to ethnic and racial justice. And so we must continue to do the work of ending institutional and systemic racism and structural violence, because those institutions and systems and structures maintain that ceiling. And so whether it's early in the morning like today, or it's late at night, the freedom that we are fighting for must never end until all of us who struggle under its weight, the weight of systemic oppression and structural racism, are free, and those ceilings keep us encaged. And so for me, as a woman of faith, I will not stop until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness as a mighty stream. And so what is mightily apparent to me on this Friday, May 14th, 2021, is that we must move and step with continued urgency in all of our movements for Black lives, for Palestine, for Colombia, for India, for wherever you are at this time, because though that is where the ceilings are, and that is where we must break those ceilings. We must move in love and not fear. And so I think of the words of the author Audre Lorde, who said, "When I care to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid." I'm not afraid. I encourage you not to be afraid to break those ceilings. They are not designed for us or meant for us. We must overcome them. And so, as you already heard from Ms. Gumede, fear is a weapon to keep us silent, to keep us immobilized, to keep us believing that justice is an impossibility for Black folks, for our Indigenous siblings, and for all of us who refuse to be crushed under the weight of systemic oppression. When we are no longer afraid, we can build some of the most powerful movements this world has ever seen. We are already doing just that all around the world. We are already breaking glass ceilings all around the world. And so right here in the United States, Black women have been on the front lines for justice. We knew that we could not wait for anyone to show up to save us. We've got us, and we have sometimes been the only ones in so many places and spaces protecting ourselves and one another. We have rocked our babies to sleep late at night when their siblings were gunned down. We are raising generations who are leading movements and breaking those glass ceilings. So I encourage all of us, let's move forward together and emerge together into another world that is built from love and not the sting of lashes, from solidarity and not stolen land, from our shared humanity and not human trafficking. That is how we break these glass ceilings together.
Yes, 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 Attica, yes. So empowering. And thank you so much for that amazing question. I totally agree with you. There are changes coming out in our modern world, but we need to stick with that. We need to empower that. We need to go through every single child out there who is Black, who is Indian, who is Asian, who is Latino, who may feel different by the society and say, hey, you're not different, you're special, go ahead and be powerful. That's exactly what we want. So we can have a next generation full of empowerment and full of changes for our world. And you're a smart, you're a smart professional Black woman in politics in the United States. Many times you are seen as a threat. So tell me, has this been difficult for you to be where you are right now and to get to the next level?
Extremely difficult for me. And as you know, Carlos, I became the first Black woman to serve in our state legislature here in Kentucky in nearly 20 years. And so as an activist and organizer, I spent years on the outside of government seeking justice. And so now I work with people in my community to bring them inside when and where decisions are being made. And that has been extremely difficult because I was the only one for almost 5 years. And a couple of years ago, we elected the first ever Indian immigrant woman to the Kentucky State Legislature, our state governing body. And then last year, we elected a second Black woman. And so now I'm not alone. And so we are working together and we support one another and we have one another's backs. And quite honestly, Carlos, people like you who have shown me love and support make it possible for me to continue to keep going because I know I'm not alone. I know that I'm not by myself. I know that people are paying attention to the work that we are trying to do in our state. We're a southern state in the United States here in Kentucky, and people often overlook us and expect the worst outcomes for states that are in the South in the United States. But we are showing a different way, and we are making sure that people know that we will not be excluded. We will not be silenced. We will rise up. And it is in that rising up that relationships are built, that power is built. And so that's my calling, to work with other women and other people who have felt the weight of oppression to say, let's build together. That I opened the door. After 20 years, I opened the door for the other two women who have come along and the women who will come along after us. And to me, that is, as Ms. Gumede said, our legacy, right? That is our legacy, that we open the door for someone else to come after us, to do even bigger and better and more important things that we could have ever imagined doing.
Yesterday in our first session, Attica, one of our guest speakers said something like that, saying that she quoted a line, a phrase that she heard back in the day, and she say, there is a space in hell for this woman who doesn't support women. And she was talking about how women needs to support each other in order to achieve their goals, to have more women in leadership, to have more women in high-level roles. And this is exactly the example of why we need that. Attica Scott is exactly the example of what can happen when a woman gives the support and the love and the knowledge and experience to other women, new generations, to come along and take the place. It's not about taking one position and be there the rest of your life. It's take that position, do what you can, and get out so the next generation can take the seat. That's exactly what it's about. So thank you so much, Attica. And the last question I have for you is, what are the most important attributes of successful leaders of today?
The most successful attributes for me of successful leaders of today is to recognize that you are one of many, and that you have to open up the door for others. I believe it's a responsibility of a leader to not want to be the only one, to not want to be the single person at the table. I believe that a successful leader has brought other people along with them. You know, where I grew up here in Louisville is the projects where people live in poverty. And there's never been an elected official from where we grew up in the projects of Louisville. And so I'm here now, and now my work is getting other people into these seats, getting other people in local, state, and federal, national elected office in Washington, D.C. That is successful leadership, bringing other people along. And as you said, Carlos, getting out of the way. I don't want to be here forever. I wanted to open the door for other people because I knew I could do it. I had that confidence. And now it's time for me, as you said, to step away so that someone else can come in and do the work that I never imagined I'd be able to do, and for me to support them. So for me, successful leadership is bringing people along with you.
Yes, Attica, I cannot be more angry with you. Thank you so much. I'm really inspired and by everything that you have said right now, and I second everything you said. Like, I really appreciate the fact that you give the time. We know that you're really busy right now, so we thank you for the time that you have for joining us. And I think I know that's the last question was the last question, but I cannot leave you without asking you this. What will be your advice to the young leaders of today?
Oh, my advice to the young leaders of today is to continue to move in your truth. Your truth is what will set you and everyone around you free. My advice to young leaders is identify mentors, many mentors. I have a spiritual mentor. I have a political mentor. I have a younger mentor, an older mentor, a mentor who is in my age group, someone who can support you in your path, whatever that path may be. I think that mentors are absolutely amazing. And I think that when you're a mentor to someone else, even someone younger or older than you, there's so much that you can learn as well, in so many ways that you can build. So that's my advice to young leaders of today. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, as a mother of two amazing young people, that I know that young people are already doing the liberation work, the freedom work, the equity work, the justice work of today, all across the world. Thank you so much for your leadership. Thank you for being the ones that we have been waiting for.
Thank you so much, Attica Scott. Thank you so much. We are so happy and proud to have you here. And we are so happy and proud to have someone like you in the state of Kentucky doing some changes. And we hope we can have someone like you in the presidency in the next 4 years. So thank you so much. And next one, we still have more amazing female leaders who will be joining us today. And she's joining from Israel. She grew up in Denmark, Switzerland, France, and Belgium. But after a year spent studying history, sociology, and writing at the New School in New York, she moved to Israel in 2016. She's the founder and I am chair of Political Personnel, founded in 2015, an initiative of in-depth interview conducted with Israeli Jewish and Palestinian women who shared how their lives has been affected by the conflicts and the political situation. Please give a warm welcome to Miss Sarah Arnd Linder. Hi, Sarah, how are you?
Hi, thank you very much for the very fine introduction. Yeah, I'm doing okay, relatively speaking. It's been some very intense and not so good couple of weeks here. But yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah, we know what's happening in Israel right now, and we send you from GCPP, we send you all our prayers and support to you, your family, and all the Israeli society and Occidental society. We were talking a little bit before we started the event, and we were saying we are just, some countries are just coming out of the COVID pandemic. We don't need a war. We don't need violence. This is the least the world and our society needs. And it's important for us to support peace in violent times. So Sarah, my first question for you will be the exact same question I asked Thando, and Attica. Who exactly is Sarah Arnd Linder?
Well, I'm to start off, I'm 35 years old. I guess that also matters in some sense. I'm Danish. My mom is Danish, but my father is Israeli, and I grew up in Denmark and then also in French-speaking countries in Europe. I'm Jewish, and I mention this because this explains my relation to where I'm living now. But I never had any intentions of living in Israel. I didn't grow up with a very strong Jewish background or Zionism. It was really by coincidence that I ended up here at the age of 20, so 14, 15 years ago. And it's been a ride. I really feel like to live here is to survive here. I've always been a naive person, I would say, a naive person. Naive, does it sound right in English? Yeah. And I always had a tendency to try and or to be aware of injustices, partly because of, well, a big deal of it has to do with my father's family background. More than half of my father's family died in the Holocaust during the Second World War, and it made me feel that as I very naively thought all my life until I came here and I was exposed to many things. I very naively thought that as people who had gone through something as horrible as a Holocaust, that meant that Jews were not capable of doing this to another people. That was my. I very quickly realized that a lot of things are going on here that are not moral, and many things are happening in Israel that are not moral. There's an occupation, there's a blockade around Gaza, which explains a lot of what is going on now. And another thing that also I think formed my being is my parents adopted my younger brother from Romania when he was 5, I was 12, and my parents and I went to Romania to get my brother. It sounds very like and that was also something that exposed me to things you just don't see at a very high level of poverty that I hadn't seen in the Western European countries I'd lived in. And in addition to this, half of my childhood, I went to international schools, which were very privileged schools because they were private and and it's a high cost to go to these schools, but they were. I hope that when I have children, that I will be able to send them to international schools, because we were like in a bubble where there was no sense of racism, or there was maybe still what do you call it, teasing as there are in schools, but not on the basis of race or gender or and on that was it had good and bad sides, because I grew up in this fantasy world, I guess, this UN world. But then when I came out of it, I was many times exposed to things that I hadn't experienced before, like racism, also anti-Semitism, and other forms of discrimination that I were just not as present in that world as it is in the normal world, I think. But I'm very grateful for that experience, because even if people perceive me as being naive, then I prefer to stay naive and be in that bubble. So that's my background. And when I came to Israel, I studied conflict resolution, international affairs, and Middle Eastern history. And while living in Israel, it was very interesting and surreal to study these subjects because I could juxtapose it to what I was going through here and what I'm living here. I live in Israel. I'm more Israeli than I am Palestinian, but I've also been to the West Bank, to the Palestinian territories many times, both for professional purposes and for social purposes, seeing friends there. And it exposed me to things that I wouldn't have seen, I think, I wouldn't have believed if I hadn't been there. And sometimes I wish I hadn't been exposed to this because it would be a lot easier to just live my life like this. But yeah, it's very, very problematic, confusing, and bad reality we have here. And I think I've realized through the years, because I wasn't as aware of it before as I am now, but I do recognize my privilege also as a white woman. Of course, as a woman worldwide, there are things we experience, but I do realize that I have privilege, white privilege also. And that is one of the reasons why I continue to do what I do as well, and why I find it important to speak up when I can. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to talk for too long either, so I think I will stop here.
Wow, it's really amazing to know your backgrounds how and how do you express it, like living in this bubble. Many people in the world are living in a bubble right now. They say there is no racism, there is no sexism, there is no patriarchy, there is no what Thando should call hetero white patriarchy. Like there's no exist in this world anymore. But they're living in this bubble where they have privilege and they have to see it. They have to just hear from it, but they haven't see it. So it's it's important that humans from across the world can that bubble and see the reality of the world, because there are realities for many, many, many parts and sections of humanity, and we need to see that. And Sarah, I want to talk about political is personal. First of all, I want to know, why did you found it? What was that inspired you to found political is personal, and what do you wanted to interview Israeli and Palestinian women?
Thank you for your question. So in 2014, which reminds that I have these flashbacks of the war back or the attack back then in 2014 in terms of what's happening now. It's very similar, I find, but in 2014 there was and this is political too, words are very political here, so I will say there was a conflict between Israel and Gaza, or there was an attack from Israel and Gaza, or, confrontation. It was in the summer of 2014, and there had been it had been ongoing for a month and a half. Israel was conducting an operation, as they called it, inside of Gaza, which was very devastating for people there. A lot of people in Gaza lost their lives, traumatized for life. And at the same time, a lot of missiles were shot from Gaza into Israel. And there was a lot of media, a lot of things going on I was listening to media here locally, and then to Danish media in Denmark, and also American media. And I just felt that there was a big amount of dehumanization in how things were portrayed. It was very, I understand that journalists need to sell stories, and especially today when you have social media, everything needs to be like quick. We don't have time to delve into the details of people's lives. It has to be, and journalists also many times kind of know in advance what their message is or what they want their message to be. So if they interview someone and it kind of conflicts with what they already had in mind, they might just leave that out. So I was very frustrated, and at the same time, I was working in something else completely. I was studying at the same time as well, and I needed a job that could, earn me money. And the NGO world, especially here in Israel and Palestine, is just not easy to work in if you want to live a decent life. So I was working in something else completely and watching the war. And at the same time, for many years, I'd been very drawn to anything that had to do with feminism, gender, or women, because it was just very personal to me, because I'm a woman, and this is what I could relate to personally as being a woman here living in a conflict zone. I don't know, I don't remember how the idea came. I actually, maybe I had I really don't remember the day or the process that went on, but it came to me very naturally that I had to work in something that had to do with women. That was my truth, I think. I couldn't work in something without it being gender, without having gender perspectives. It didn't feel genuine to me completely. And I'd written a blog for about a year about my experiences here and what I'd seen. And I felt like I like writing, and I'm kind of good at it. So why not use it as a channel for women to let me know what they experience here, what their thoughts are. So using my writing as a channel. And so I just began, I went to my friend and interviewed her, an Israeli Jewish woman, and interviewed her about her experience growing up in Israel, what she had experienced during times of tensions. Then I went to interview a Palestinian friend of mine, and then I found more and more women. And it was very, very important for me from the beginning to not filter what they were saying, maybe to try and structure it or just to fine edit it so that it made some sense, so that it was readable. But I didn't want to, it wasn't my words, it was them, but just helping them channel it through my writing. Then I continued since then, and I realized with time that there was a lot of value in these testimonies. It could be used academically, which it has been done, and it could also be used for think tanks or in reaching policymakers that needed this kind of material. And it could also be shown to people around the world who perhaps wanted to get a more nuanced view of what is going on here from a woman's perspective, though.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for your amazing story and experience of what's happening in Israel and the conflict between Israel and Palestine, and how Gaza is in the middle of it. Thank you so much for your amazing work that you are doing in Israel. I think it's really important for women like you to support women in Israel, doesn't matter where they come from, being they Jewish or being they Palestinian. And that's really the important that I want to highlight this is because there is actual history, culture of fighting between Jews, Israeli people, and Palestinian people, and the fact that women are in the middle of it. They're also in a fight, but here is a Jewish woman who is willing to change that up to help humans to tell the stories, and that's important. It's important for us not to divide ourselves between race or religions or ideology, because at the end we're all human. Thank you so much, Sarah, for your amazing story and your experience, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm really also very amazed at what I've heard so far, and it also it's nice to meet like this and hear from like-minded people elsewhere. It's inspiring, and it's also comforting, I think, especially right now for me here, when all I hear is extreme political discourse, which is very saddening and very scary. So it's really inspiring and comforting to hear.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you so much. Next one, we have another amazing female leader. She's a really famous one. She's a fashion model and advocate of diversity who has made her mark globally. Her varied portfolio includes her background as a sexual offense prosecutor in the regional court at the National Prosecuting Authority, an international fashion model, an actress, and a cultural leader. Her work as an activist resulted in her contribution to the United Nations policy discussion around albinism in the SADC region during its consultation phase. Please give a very, very warm welcome to the one and only Thando Hopa. Hi, Thando. How are you?
I'm all right, and you, Carlos? Sorry, I'm just going to want to just fix everything so that I see you, because I can't see you anymore. There we go. I'm all right, and you? Thank you for the very grand introduction. I don't think I quite deserve it, but thank you so much for such a wonderful introduction.
Oh, you do deserve it. And I think that was a surely short bio for you. For those who doesn't know, Thando Hopa has a beautiful curriculum that that portfolio, we can create a whole new event. There's so much information about her work there. And we are so happy and excited to have you here, Thando. But, I read your curriculum, I read your resume, I know who you are, but people here doesn't know. So who exactly is Thando Hopa? Let us know.
So Thando Hopa, I think I'm going to first start with sort of a very heritage-based introduction. Thando is Umamgwevu, Umaskomo, Mahutulu, Mshajana. That is my Xhosa heritage. And those are clan names. And the reason why, lately I've appreciated clan names so much is because clan names remind us that we carry many with us and that we are carried by many. So that is my Xhosa heritage. I am currently a cultural leader at the World Economic Forum. I have the background of a prosecutor, but that was a little bit of some moons ago. And I am also a fashion model, as you had indicated. So who am I? I am based in Johannesburg. I grew up in Johannesburg all my life. In fact, Johannesburg is such a cosmopolitan city that I say that the first time when I actually traveled the world was in Johannesburg, because I found people from all over the place in Johannesburg. And I grew up in a place called Asia South. It was, mostly just, some people would characterize it as a township, but it predominantly had people of color, which meant that, in that kind of environment, I learned very quickly the loaded baggage that comes with the color of one's skin. But it's actually quite interesting because I understood forms of racial discrimination, not first through race. And this was when I was maybe 5 years old, but I understood it through color. And as time went on, I became a prosecutor also, not entirely. I studied my law degree. I actually wanted to become an actress. My father wanted me to become an accountant. So we got to law because we were just trying to reach a compromise. And when I went into law school, there was something that was called street law. And street law made me really sort of fall in love with understanding how the law could really somewhat, change so many aspects of society. And then I also got quite interested in the concept of consent. And because of that, and that's with regards to sexual relations, I did a very small project trying to understand consent. And I studied, what I unearthed is that there was a disparity between, a gender-based disparity, to be quite honest with you, on what consent was. So I went into prosecuting, and then shortly after, I became a sexual offense prosecutor. Now, in that time, because, it's quite an odd story, in that time, I got scouted to be a model. And I didn't really, I had no dreams of being a model whatsoever. I didn't envision it at all in my life. But when I got scouted, I decided to only go into this fraternity because I thought, it would be it would allow me to bring forward positive representation for albinism in particular. And that came through like a lot of convincing from my sister. But as I went into media, and at the same time, I was a lawyer. And I always say that it's quite interesting because I feel like both were in the business of representation. Me being a model and me being a lawyer, I was harnessing work that dealt with representation. When I was modeling, I think I didn't spend enough time with it while I was a lawyer for it to really dawn on me how complex this particular journey was at the time and how it was going to be. Because I think I would model maybe about 4 times a year. When I was in the sexual offense courts, modeling was not a priority for me because I was dealing with rape cases constantly. I had so many people's stories to carry with me and ensure that they have justice, that modeling sort of took a back seat with regards to that. And I'm not saying it as if it was something that is not important in itself. It's just that the people who I had to help protect had far more urgent issues to deal with. So after about 4 years of prosecuting, I had this overwhelming feeling that I was finished. And I can't explain it to anybody, people were thinking to themselves, but this is going so well. You got promoted to the regional court only after 2 years in the district court. And, I was the youngest prosecutor in the regional court at the time. And nobody could understand it. And I said to them, I had this overwhelming feeling that I finished walking this path and that a new path needed to begin. And I didn't think that path was modeling, to be quite honest. But strangely enough, as soon as I finished, I got invited to Sundance Director's Lab, but it was a workshop for a particular script. And that's how my journey as a model really got cemented. But in that time, I think I was somewhat, and I would probably say, there's something also Thando was saying earlier. She talked about having the language for things, when I started modeling, I wasn't doing a lot of modeling work, but the media was, that grew entirely all around the world very quickly. But it wasn't growing because specifically focused on fashion and beauty, but it was growing specifically focused on a narrative that I didn't know that when I was walking in the modeling space, I was walking within a scripted narrative about what it was to be African, what it was to have albinism, what it was to be Black, what it was to even be a woman. And I one of the anecdotes of that was when I started, they would write albino model A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And I thought to myself, geez, I'm walking into the space And I noticed how I was being unnamed. My condition, having albinism, was being entirely emphasized. And being an African having albinism, there was sort of a stereotype that would constantly play out. And even though there were so many stories that were true with regards to violence that was targeted to persons with albinism, that is true still, with regards to, you know, just a great deal of stigma and all of that. But the manner in which that narrative was held was so consuming, in a way where it became difficult to diversify the narrative, or to even diversify the concept of our humanity when you're in this body, you know. But a lot of amazing things happened even within that time. And I also, actually, I can quite relate to the second speaker, because I also was sort of walking into a path where albinism was extremely underrepresented. I didn't really have references on how do I walk this particular path, because, you know, about 10 years ago, geez, to see a woman on a cover of a magazine, or to see her on television, a woman who's got albinism, it didn't happen. And so I continued walking this path. And interestingly, I learned how to sort of merge institutional pillars. So I was working within media. And at that time, the UN was working on an action plan with regards to persons with albinism. This was about 2016. And my legal knowledge, along with my presence in media, sort of merged. And now I could bring in all of these experiences and actually sort of allow them to make their way into institutions through law, through policy. And yeah, and I think then after that, you know, the journey became quite colorful with time. But yeah, I think I summarized it.
Oh God, I can literally sit here for ages just hearing you talk about your experience and your work. Like, so many things, so many historical things, so many things that we can agree that you know, we can feel like represented. Somehow we all can feel represented in you, because, you know, for example, when Thando Gumede, advocate, Madam Advocate Thando Gumede, was the one who presented Thando Hopa to me. And she said, you know, I have a great friend. She's my sister, and she's amazing. She's a leader. She's doing this and doing that. She will be great for the Women in Leadership Role event. And we get in touch, you know. And I read a little bit about yourself and internet and in your bio. And I was so impressed. But I was impressed to find out that you were the first albino woman to be in the cover of Vogue, for example. I was impressed by the fact that you were the first albino woman in many things. And you're not that old. That happened just, you know, many times, many years ago. But you were the first. Of course, now you have opened the door for more albino women and albino people out there to walk the same path you did. And we appreciate that. We thank you for that. But I want to ask you, how does it feel being the first in something? You barely talk to us about not having like a path to follow, not having someone to be represented with, not having someone to say, I happen to pass through the same thing. And we talk too much about Black people's rights and civil rights for Black people, but we don't talk about albino people. We left albino people behind. And I know that you have an initiative for this. I want you to talk a little bit about that, please.
Okay, first I have to correct you on language. It's person with albinism or people with albinism, not albino. I know that generally that is it's an English term that is used quite loosely, but the reason why, and last last year, I think, no, last year, we formed the Global Albinism Alliance, and we had so much of a conversation with regards to this. And the issue with the term albino, and this also becomes a bit difficult because it depends on which language you're using. If it's French, there's a different nuance, and Czech Republic has a different nuance, but I'm going to focus on English. Is that the term albino somewhat informs a level of dehumanization. And the example I generally give is that when you're looking at European literature in the early sort of 1800s, they would say, hey, I saw an albino. They'd write, I saw an albino, and they would be talking about an animal. And a few years later, they would write, I saw an albino, and they'd be talking about a human being. So they would speak about this term interchangeably. And in order for us to just somewhat not create any of these issues, persons with albinism is the most appropriate term. Going back to your question. Now, this is the absolute interesting thing about, and going back to the issue of language, intersectionality. I learned that term probably in 2016. I didn't know what was happening with regards to me. I felt somewhat a barrier or forms of violence. And when I say forms of violence, I don't mean physical violence, but there was a manner in which the cultural, political, and social environment was responding to me that I feel actually lands on the body. I feel like psychologically and emotionally it lands on the body. You feel your body somewhat tighten, or you feel this level of exhaustion because you would be in certain spaces and you would come back feeling like you've come back from a war and you wouldn't understand why. And that a lot of the times I think is because you find that a lot of your identities are under attack. And with regards to me, it was being Black, being a person with albinism, being a woman, and being African. And that obviously also, depending on context, certain identities would be invoked, or certain identities would be vulnerable, or certain identities would be under attack. Now, focusing on the issue of, working within the space of representation, and even the collaborations that I had to do, I had to remind myself that, oh my goodness, I'm carrying all of these bodies within me, these identities within me, because the African identity is not separate from the albinism identity. I don't sometimes have albinism and sometimes I'm African. I am both these things. And sometimes these things are actually at a crossfire. Because, and also it really depends on which context you're looking at, because within the African context, there were forms of racial discrimination of persons with albinism within the Black community too. And if you're looking at it also from the Western context, there were forms of racial discrimination, but it also came, albinism had racial discrimination come in through many spheres. If you look at the UN Convention on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, it looks at ethnicity, it looks at color, and it looks at race. And these were sort of aspects that I had to, even when we were working within the Global Alliance, we had to honestly look at how we can respond to these conditions through mostly legislation. Just to kind of give you a little bit more of a framework, the other thing with regards to albinism is that it's not just the stratification of race or racial discrimination, which it deals with. It's also the stratification of disability. So it's an absolutely interesting existence. And actually that alone helped me move in my space, because I started learning strategies from feminism. I started learning strategies from disability rights activists. I started learning strategies from queer rights activists. I read those people, whether it was your Bell Hooks, your James Baldwin, whether it was like several advocates in the disability rights movement, they helped me unpack my environment, and for instance, just and tell me how much time I have, because I can talk for a while. Okay. The disability rights movement, and it's all very interesting to see how activists sort of borrow strategies from each other, because we have the social model of disability now, in which I started understanding that, the social model of disability tells you that the environment around you is what causes the marginalization and deprivation, etc. And the social model of disability allowed us to have ramps, allowed us to have text messaging for the deaf community, allowed us to just, it revolutionized the law, technology, etc. But the social model of disability came from the Black consciousness movement, and not a lot of people know that. And you see that and I looked at how all of these identities sort of helped me navigate my space, including feminism, helped me navigate my space. And I think that was entirely quite helpful for me. But I do think that it's a time sort of where we're trying to know how to speak about racial discrimination, also in terms of its nuances. And that has been a very difficult thing, especially even last year within the Black Lives Movement, the Black Lives Matter movement. Whenever we had to try and deconstruct the issue of racial discrimination, it really became an entirely complicated subject, looking at all the nuances that fall within Black albinism. So to be quite honest, we are still learning how to actually approach that in the best way, and somewhat in the most redemptive way, and in a way that still ensures equity and social justice. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Thando. Unfortunately, our time is up, but we could be talking about the issues of albinism people for ages. This is something new, you know? This is something new that has come to this space, talking about albinism people and how they are less represented and how we don't speak about them enough. But that will be a task and homework for Generation Change International to make a new space where we can talk fully about the rights of albinism people and the struggle they face because of the condition. Thank you so much, Thando Hopa, for joining us today. Your story is not just inspirational, but admirable. Thank you for opening the door for many more persons with albinism all around the world to follow the path that you have created for them. Thank you so much for your resilience and your admirable professional work. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos, and thank you everybody for having me, and for all of these wonderful women who are sharing their stories and their insights with all of us.
Now, move to our next speaker. She is Generation Change International representative in India. She's a renowned social activist and social entrepreneur in India. She has been working in the field of community welfare development since many years and has emerged as a highly respected social entrepreneur from 2012. She has been participating and practicing advocacy in gender equality and gender-based violence since 2015. She's also the founder and chair of Divinity Servers. Please give a warm welcome to my dear friend Seema Rajput from India.
Thank you so much, Carlos, for that warm welcome introduction. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure indeed to be here and to be a part of Generation Change International. It's a great thing that you have come up with. Uh, these 2 days have been so inspiring. I can't put it into words. Yesterday, it was like a dream come true to have Huri speaking, Safira, Su Yung Yang, and Jenny on the same platform. I think that was amazing. Yesterday was a blast. And today I am so happy to hear Sarah. Sarah, thank you for being here with all that courage that you have. You're, speaking to us and living in that. Hats off to you, Sarah. And then, of course, Attica, Thando Hopa, amazing. I know these are stories that actually lead way, that actually give courage to everyone other to move ahead. So thank you, Carlos, for the introduction. I think most of it you've said. So I am Seema Rajput Verma, and I am from India. I've been practicing advocacy for gender equality, for gender-based violence, for sexual harassment from, I think basically officially from 2012, but basically I guess since I was a little kid, because I've always been a rebel in that field. So I guess I've been that way since I was a kid, you know. But the only thing is, I was educated in a convent, in a girls' convent. So there we were only girls. So there we were always empowered because we could only think of girls being empowered. We didn't have boys to, go ahead and see the difference or, distinguish between them. But it was when we came into the college, in the university, and we had co-education, and that's when I think the more rebel of me came out, when there were differences, and when that's when I thought, that's when it came to me that gender equality is something I'll have to stand for a lifetime.
Thank you, Seema, for your introduction. We are so happy and excited to have you here. As I tell everyone, Seema is many, many things. She's an amazing activist and advocate in India. She's now putting her path more in a more globally way with Generation Change International. I'm really excited to have you here. We're really excited to have you as a representative in India. So to start this off, I know that you have an amazing background story in India. You have helped so many people in India from the rural spaces to have a more dignified way of life. You have also helped not just women, but men find justice on violence-based gender. And Seema is one of, this is one of the most favorite things about Seema, and is that she not only fights against violence based on gender, but she also knows that violence based on gender is not just violence against women. It's violence against women, against men, against trans people, against lesbian, against gay, against every single human. And she fights for it. She fights for women, she fights for men, she fights for everyone in an equal way. And that's why I'm so, so proud of her, and I admire her so much, because her work in India is really important. It needs to be amplified and replicated all across the world. But Seema, please tell us a little bit about your work in India and what is Divinity Servers?
Carlos, thank you. Yes, what Carlos rightly said, for me, every gender is equal. So when I always say that, when I say feminism, when I say I'm a feminist, I'm not a feminist for women. I don't stand only for women. And many women might take it against me, but yes, I stand for equality of all genders. I stand for the queer people, I stand for LGBTQ, I stand for every single person, because for me, being a feminist means standing for equal rights for every human being. Because Divinity Serves organization, which I founded, was because I felt the need to go out there and voice for all genders. Because what I was seeing back in my own country in India was, we had so many organizations who are working for women, who are voice for women. Agreed, I come from a country where there's a patriarchal system. Even today, it's very tough to break those barriers. In fact, I've had to face many obstacles to reach where I am today. But yes, it is my continued motivation and my continuous just go out there and be there, that has come up and made me stand where I am today. Because when I started work, I started going to the villages, because the education is not there. I felt in cities, we have schools, we have colleges, so we are privileged in cities. We get to know what our rights are, what laws the government has in place. So in city, in schools and colleges, students are aware of that. Women who are working in corporates are aware of it. But the major population is back in the rural, and back in the villages, and there they were not aware of their rights. But at the same time, over the years, when I started working, I realized that what I strongly believed, as I said, since teenager, I strongly believe that gender based violence, or violence itself, I believe has no gender. I believe it's any emotion. You cannot attach any emotion to a gender. Love cannot be gender specific. Hate cannot be gender specific. And the same way, Violence cannot be gender specific. And that's what my facts were proved right when I went on field, when I started going and meeting people, when I started working as the founder of Divinity Serves, when I went out there with my team, when I started talking about gender equality, that's when I realized that yes, there have been issues where women have been the victim. But when I did a survey, I found out 58% of men were also victim, but they never voiced. They couldn't voice, and they couldn't voice because of the social stigma. Men are supposed to be the stronger gender. They could not voice, and people would shrug them off. And women would actually get away with it in many cases. The same thing I found out with transgenders. Transgenders in our country, I would say, are the most neglected gender. Our country has now started opening up very little to LGBTQ. But again, as I said, emotions cannot be gender specific, and so violence cannot be gender specific. My work here and my organization work in India is that we create educational and awareness modules so that we can go reach out to people and try and change the mindset, because this is an issue of a mindset. This is something which has been passed on from generations to us. This is something which needs to be broken at a very tender age. So when I say we go to schools and we talk to children who are the age for 4 years, 5 years. There's a one batch that we do of those children. At the same time, we talk to the children who are into their teenage, who are 12, 13, 14, entering into the teenage. Then we have a module of adults who are 18 and above, because the mindset at every age is different, and we need to change that mindset at every age. We need to tell and bring it to the people that nothing in this world is gender specific. We all are part of this planet. We all have equal rights, and we all have the rights to voice ourselves. We all have an equal platform for everything. I'm happy to say that I've been working on this from 7 years. And today, if I sit in this today, we've reached to more than 500,000 people in India itself to spread the awareness about the rights and about equality of all genders. We've been awarded at various levels by the government, by the central government of India, by the state governments for our projects. But more than that, it's when I go out there and when I'm able to get a case filed and get justice to a victim, that's when I feel is the biggest award that I have received. We have been able to get justice to more than 3,800 victims in India itself. We've worked with various state polices, and we've made sure that every time I'm out there or my team is out there on the field, I make sure I have a team of the state police with me, because when I am there, when the people are there, the police cannot shrug off their duties. They will have to listen to the victim. They will have to file a case. They will have to get her justice or get him justice. So that is for that. And I just hope that, God gives me the support of all of you people like Carlos, people like Thando, and all of you. I feel I'm blessed to have been connected to all of you. And together with you, I think we can all have a little better future for the generation to come, so that at least we can lay a path for them to move ahead. Because today we're talking about leadership. For me, leadership is about delegating. For me, a true leader is someone who delegates. It's not someone who takes the chair or who commands or who sets the rules. For me, a leader is someone whom people can confide, whom people can trust to speak their voice, tell their secrets, tell their, whatever's happened to them, their miseries, who can come and open up to you. And someone who can go along with those people, who can delegate and who can tell, yes, it's for you to do it now. Come on, you can do it now. So I think that is leadership for me. And I guess everyone is born as a leader. It's just that we have to identify with ourselves every morning when we wake up. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you so much.
A standing ovation. A standing ovation, Sima. Oh my God, you killed the stage right now.
Thank
Wow.
you.
What a power, such a energy, such a brilliant work you have presented to us. So much truth. Every single word that was out of your mouth was truth after truth after truth. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for that honesty. Thank you for that transparency. Thank you for telling us your truth, even though sometimes that truth may not be the truth of someone else, you know? It takes courage to tell what you think and just caring about your telling your story, telling your truth, being yourself without caring about what the other may think or what the other may say. It takes a lot of courage. I know about that. And bravo, bravo. Kudos to you, Sima, because that was absolutely amazing. And I'm supporting 100% your work, your advocacy, and your professionalism, not just in India, but worldwide. Because what you're doing is important, again, that we can replicate it across the world. It's important for us to go, as you say, to the village. We go to the people who are vulnerable. We go to them, we talk to them, we ask them. It's not just about being here. Being a leader is not about just talking. Being a leader is not about just, saying you have to do this and you have to do that. It's actually delegating, not actually going to the place and say what we can do for you, what we can change. Let's do it. Let's put an initiative together and let's change this once and for all. And I'm feeling so inspired and so happy and excited with you and your work, Sima. Thank you. Thank you so much for everything you are doing.
Thank you, Carlos. It's completely my pleasure. Believe me. Believe me, it's my pleasure. It's my honor.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us today. It's really a pleasure to have you here. It's a true pleasure to have you in Generation Change International. We have to get to the next speaker, but I just wanted to thank you again for joining us today. Truly a pleasure and an honor to have you here, Sima. So next speaker, last but not least, is she's an iconic, actually, youth leader, winner of the 2016 International Children Peace Prize, 20 years old, iconic youth leader, global influencer, environmentalist, champion of women and children's rights, TED for speaker, climate reality mentor, author, musician, peace and sustainability campaigner, and 430 on the 30 and the first ever winner of the Boys Choice Youth Goverkev Slug Legacy Award for her work on nuclear disarmament. Please give a very, very warm welcome to the one and only Kekashan Basu. Hi, Kekashan, how are you?
Good, thank you, Carlos. How are you?
I'm doing great, feeling really excited about hearing about you. I know you have some presentations to share with us. So I won't take your time. Go ahead. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to hear what you have to say to us today.
Amazing. Thank you very much. First of all, Eid Mubarak. And, I'm very happy to be here today and to be amongst such amazing leaders who are bringing about change and really making us so proud. So thank you so much for all of the work that all of you do. So as Carlos mentioned, I'm a United Nations Human Rights Champion of Forbes 30 Under 30 and founder president of Green Hope Foundation. And for the last 13 years, I've been working at both a grassroots level with Green Hope Foundation, which is a social innovation enterprise that I founded when I was 12 years old, with the mission of empowering vulnerable communities, especially women and girls, to create a peaceful, equitable, and sustainable world where no one is left behind. And in addition to working at the front lines, Green Hope Foundation also engages at the highest levels of policy making, providing the marginalized communities that we work with a voice so that they too can influence decision making. And my work addresses global issues through local actions, empowering those who have so far remained invisible, working on the intersections of climate justice, of gender inequalities, health and sanitation, clean energy, clean water, natural balance, and of course, peace and nuclear disarmament. So my life-changing moment occurred 13 years ago when, as a 7-year-old, I saw an image on with this dead bird with its belly full of plastic. And I still recall that I went numb with shock imagining the bird's utter agony. So I decided to do something about it. I started going around to my community, talking to shops, businesses, our neighbors. And I was met with a combination of acceptance and enthusiasm by some adults, but at the same time, I was also met with amusement, disdain, cynicism by other adults who were bemused at being told by a 7-year-old about stopping their plastic use. And this has been and continues to be my greatest challenge from day one until now. I've constantly been fighting against these 8 stereotypes that portrays children and youth as non-serious actors who are only good enough to march on the streets and strike, while adults pull the strings and take all the important decisions. But instead of letting that dampen my enthusiasm, I countered that adult cynicism through my work, always telling my naysayers, look at my impact, not my age or not my gender. And I've done that through my ground level work. When I was also 12, I got elected as Global Coordinator for Children and Youth at the United Nations Environment Program, and that made me the youngest person and the only minor in the world to ever have held that position. But this, coupled with when I started my work 4 years prior to that, came with a lot of challenges. Since I joined the international arena and the UN system at such a young age, and also because I was a girl, I faced a lot of harassment from older youth and adults in the UN process who, now that I think about it, they were all men. And, can you imagine the trauma if as an 8-year-old you started receiving crude and malicious emails or being threatened with physical violence by an adult for speaking up about children's and women's rights, or being the focus of a social media hate campaign by jealous older youth who felt threatened by a 12-year-old girl in a leadership position. So for the past 13 years, these challenges have been a part of my daily life, not just because I was a woman or a young person or a person of color, but additionally because I was breaking stereotypes. When we talk about inclusivity, the amount of harassment, slander, maligning that I received from the same people who preached inclusivity was truly horrifying, but I did not stop my work. I kept going. And subsequently, I faced death threats. I was a victim of cyberbullying, stalking, but I did not let anything come in my way because my passion was and is stronger than my fear of the bad people. I even had an experience within the UN when I took my rightful seat at the table and I was told by an older youth, the same man who continued to facilitate the harassment, that get up from your seat, this is not a game. And I was 14 years old at that time. And I remember that thinking that I was not going to get up from that seat because that was my rightful place. And later on, I realized that, if I can go through something like that, there's so many other women and girls, people who are going through so much worse. And by me not getting up from that seat, that was my small way of just fighting back against these horrible people who were so threatened by a young girl in a leadership position. Now, I'm very fortunate that I've had a very strong support system in my parents, and they've taught me that bullies are essentially cowards, and the most effective way of countering them was to confront them. And, that has been my mantra, and I continue to look at all of these challenges squarely in the eye and move ahead undeterred, And it's so important that we don't let these bullies stop us from doing our good work, because when you do good work, as evidenced today, there is constantly going to be detractors. So I decided to openly confront these bullies, speaking out about them on TV, to the media. This did scare them off, but it did continue. And I feel that as young women, we constantly face these threats that come in various forms and from the least expected quarters, and one must always be prepared. So my take has always been to use my honesty and the strength of my work to counter these malicious campaigns. And of course, I carry the strength that my Green Hope Foundation family gives me all the time. And it does give me hope that there's an increasing number of women in leadership roles, breaking down barriers in male-dominated bastions, whether it's in space missions or leading nations. And as we've seen during this pandemic, it's the women-led nations that have been the most successful in combating the virus and ensuring that their people remain safe. So it's really important that, we understand this. And there are also stereotypes about women as the ones who should solely shoulder the domestic burden, about unpaid care. That also must be erased, because at the same time we have progress, we also have a lot of regression in certain societies. And the change in mindset will only come through education. Now, when I founded Green Hope Foundation as a 12-year-old, I never imagined that in a short span of time, it would evolve into a global change-making platform where we are now working in 25 countries with over 140,000 people. And we achieved this solely through self-belief, perseverance, honesty, hard work. And these are traits that I would advise that, my fellow young women to adopt, because success doesn't just happen by chance. One must be prepared to work really hard to achieve one's dreams. And that effort must be enshrined in honesty, as that will stand the test of time. And I'm really fortunate that my team members, whether they're 6 years old or my age, they all share that same passion for making a difference. And it's this shared belief that's brought us together. And, it's really important that as leaders, we must also be willing to demonstrate that we walk the talk, and people appreciate leaders who are willing to take those bold decisions. Now, at Green Hope Foundation, we use education for sustainable development as our lens, and that is the work that we do. And every time we're able to bring a smile on the face of a child through our work, I feel extremely proud, because our work has taken us to war zones, to refugee camps, orphanages, to climate disaster areas where there's extreme suffering. And in these areas, when we get to bring about joy, when we get to make a child smile, there can be no greater reward or prize. Now, traveling to Kutupalong, the world's largest refugee camp on the border of Myanmar and Bangladesh, that's home to over 1 million Rohingya refugees, was probably, I would say, the most important risk that myself and my team took. Now, Bangladesh was holding its elections at the time, and we had only that window available, given that it required us to satisfy several official protocols to get access. And our project was to engage and educate Rohingya refugee children who were traumatized by the horrors that they'd witnessed. And there were tremendous safety issues that could have cropped up, but we managed to successfully engage with the children through art and music, since they didn't know how to read and write, and bring about that smile on their faces. And I don't think that, we've reached where we are, where I've reached where I am now, because of one incident or risk. It's a continuous effort, and I don't stop working for even a day or a weekend, because I love what I'm doing. Every step that I take forward energizes me to carry on further, and the same passion is reflected in Green Hope Foundation. Because I've faced the challenges, because of my age, my gender, other social determinants, I have made sure that Green Hope Foundation is all about providing safe spaces and ensuring that especially women and girls were able to take forward our dreams without fearing for our lives. So let me give you a few examples. Our project, Powering Education in Rural Liberia, is installing a solar panel grid, installing solar panels in homes, schools, and the community center, as well as solar streetlights in a town that was so far without electricity. Now, this is a climate and gender smart way for ensuring that the electricity reaches the villages, because we're using clean and renewable energy in the form of solar energy that in turn provides the girls safe spaces to go to school at night and walk the streets at night to go to the school, where we're training them on computer literacy, empowering them to become economically independent, thus breaking them away from the vicious cycle of abuse, drugs, and crime. And their upliftment is lifting their entire town out of poverty and creating a new generation of leaders who will take informed decisions on the fate of our planet. Now, gender equality is also an integral part and reflected in every aspect of our work. And our work is on feminist sustainable development and feminist climate justice, where we focus on empowering women, especially those in marginalized societies, as they're the ones most often left behind, affected most by war, by climate and change-induced disasters from floods, storms, typhoons, which only exacerbates the inequalities they face because of their gender. So we work on clean water and sanitation, skills building through education, sustainable fishing, workshops on how to protect themselves and their children from sexual assault. And during this pandemic, which has added even more of a burden on them, in Bangladesh, for instance, we have installed the tube wells in their villages there. Now, prior to this installation, the children, the women, and the elderly specifically used to die from mysterious diseases caused by drinking contaminated water. But through the installation of these deep bore tube wells, we've been able to provide them with clean, arsenic-free water. We've built toilets that ensures the proper hygiene and sanitation of the people in the village, especially the women and girls, because previously they used to be at risk of snake bites, of trafficking and exploitation, kidnapping when they used to go out at night into the fields to relieve themselves. But these toilets now provide them with that safe space. And we've also installed rainwater harvesting systems, and we've built them in such a way that they're the most effective for that village to use the excess water that comes from the continuous rainfall. And it's again led by the women and girls of that village, really creating a sustainable bioeconomy that is climate and gender smart. So my message at the end of the day is that, make yourself so powerful with knowledge and expertise that no one ever underestimates you, and definitely not because of a social determinant. I think it's also really important to never forget your value system. The initial acceptance might not be there, but fighting for what is right is more important than what someone thinks of you. Be a role model. If you're better than others, you will have less friends and well-wishers, but you keep going. And practice what you preach. If your actions are not in sync with your call for equality and justice, then you're just as bad as those whom you fight against. And finally, always remember to have empathy, to be honest, hardworking, optimistic, and passionate, because whatever comes from the heart stays. The challenges that face us are daunting, but they are not insurmountable. Someone has to take that first step, so let that person be you. Thank you very much.
Wow. Wow, I'm speechless. And everyone in the chat is speechless too. This is such an important and amazing work, Kasia. And I think I tell everyone's here that we thank you for that amazing job that you're doing with Great Hope. We thank you for caring for children and women in vulnerable situations across the globe and in Bangladesh. It's so amazing the work you're doing. And Kekachi Mbasu is the exact example of what young leaders of today are doing for the world. Kekachi is the example of what this generation is made of. And she's also the example of that leadership is not about being in a high level position or being the chair. Leadership is all about going to the vulnerable area and helping people in that area where they're vulnerable. So thank you very, very much, Kekachi. And thank you. I know you're really busy, so Thank you so much for having the time to joining us today and give us that amazing and brilliant presentation that gave us all, that leave us all speechless. Thank you so much, Kekasha.
Thank you very much for having me.
And this and she's, all my respect and admire to all of the female leaders that were here today. From Thando Gumede to Kekasha Mbasu, thank you for being such amazing leaders with such amazing ideologies, with such amazing backgrounds and stories that not just inspire us all, but motivate us to go beyond our limits and to go beyond our reach. Thank you so much for being here, to have the time to keep together and give us your experience, a part of your experience. Now, 15 minutes is not enough to talk about your work, but I really appreciate that you all are here, and I couldn't be more happy and proud to have this amazing panel of 6 brilliant female leaders from across the globe who were just giving us a huge example of how being a true leader doesn't matter the age, the race, or sexual identity. Thank you so much to everyone who joined it today. I want, before going to the questions, you can raise your hand. You have 30 seconds to ask a question to a specific speaker. So you can raise your hand right now if you want to open your mic and do so. But before we're going to do that, I want to give the space to my lovely co-chair, Chennai Osborne. Chennai, what did you think of today's last day event, a woman in leadership role, a look into the present? What do you think about this?
I feel completely and totally inspired. And I think what I love most about this is that we have such a diverse group of people here, all doing amazing work across the world. And I'm not as young as some, I'm not as old as others, but I'm always learning something new. And our last speaker just inspired me to do more. We all have these ideas, and this is something that I do want to enhance, is that we all have these ideas and thoughts and fears of failure, maybe fears of success. But I think if we don't try, then we'll never know. And just not getting up from that one seat, I think that 99% of the people would have gotten up from that seat. And I think I might have been one of those people, to be perfectly honest. So I applaud you, Kekesha, for what you have done, for what you continue to do. But I applaud each and every one of our speakers and all of the members and our participants that have joined us here today, because this just shows that you all want to make a difference, and being here is already making that difference. So thank you so much, everyone, for your inspiration, for your hope, for your dedication. And I look forward to many, many more events like this.
Thank you so much, Chennai. We are really, really excited and proud and happy in United Church International of how well these 2-day events went. Yesterday and today was total success, and we appreciate that our guest speakers of today had the time to join us, and we appreciate everyone who joined today to hear these amazing female leaders. We have 2 people with their hands raised. Please remember, 30 seconds, no more than that, because we are out of time. So we are going to start with Ignacio Spiso, who's actually a member of Generation Change International. Ignacio, you can turn your mic on.
Hi, everyone. My question is for Thando Hopa. It really inspired me to hear that she advocates for all kind of racism, not just for Black racism, but for the challenges that you have to embrace with albinism and that community. And my question would be, what is the challenge we might face to advocate for racism without it being just advocating for Black people or Latino people, but just for everyone? Because racism exists in every kind of spectrums, and we have to look at it for what it is and not for what it is socially typified. So what is the challenge? Thank you.
Okay, I don't know if I'm supposed to answer it immediately or do we wait for all the questions?
I'm sorry, Thando, we can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
We hear you, but really, really with a really, really slow volume.
Oh,
It's like a whisper.
is it
Yeah.
is it still a whisper? I wonder what's wrong. I'm not sure. I'm honestly not sure. I've unmuted. So is it still a problem?
No, still the same.
I'm so sorry. I don't know if I can I respond on the chat?
Yes, yes,
Absolutely.
you can do that.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so we had another person with the hand raised, but I think it just disappeared. So I believe that it had the same question than Ignacio. Well, I think this is all for today. We are going to wait a few minutes so Thando can write the answer to Ignacio and put it on the chat. So meanwhile, I want to really thank every and each of you for being here today. It was such a delight to hear from each of you. And since we have a few minutes, so we have Thando Hopa to write her answer to the chat so everyone can see it. I would like to give a few seconds, please be short, to all our speakers to say a final words before we leave. We are starting with Thando Gumede.
Hi, Carlos. So I think in my final words, 15 minutes is not enough, unfortunately, but I think the main focus for me was to begin to unpack for people my ideology and how I perceive the world. If anyone wants to have a look of this full spectrum of the work that I do, from sexual and reproductive health and rights to law and policy to gender-based violence and education, you can visit my social media platforms and check out my link tree as well, and we can connect. But the last message I want to leave for everyone today is that it's really critical for us to make an investment in children. And I am dedicating my life to children and the advancement and their empowerment. And the last thing as well is just that as leaders, we need to be healers in our work. And I hope that maybe one day we will arrange a discussion on healing. The whole of humanity needs to begin to embark on a process of collective healing. But healing requires forgiveness. And forgiveness requires for the people who have caused pain and damage to take accountability. And then there can be an exchange going forward. But at the core of everything that we do, no matter what you call yourself, we need to embark on collective healing because our society is deeply damaged and we're deeply hurt. And much of what we do on a daily basis is a reflection of that. Feel free to reach out. I look forward to hearing from other people, and I look forward to uniting with all of you and collaborating and dismantling systems of oppression, but also advancing the healing, the collective healing project of humanity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thando. We appreciate your work and we appreciate that you were able to join us today. And we really appreciate and honored and proud to have you as a member of Generation Change International. Thank you so much, Thando Gumede. Advocate Thando Gumede. Next one is Sarah Arnd Linder. Please make it short. Your final words, please.
Okay, I will try to make it short. I want to say, first of all, something I wrote down here is follow your gut feeling. be true to yourself. That's at least how I work, and that's what keeps me going. If I wasn't true to myself, and if I didn't listen to that gut feeling, I wouldn't be doing what I do, and I might as well just have worked in something else. That's something that I do on a daily basis. I think lately also what I've noticed is, and something that also needs to be focused on, is also the need for activists and change makers and leaders to also, I know there's a lot of talk about self-care, and there's a lot of criticism of how that is, but I see a lot of burnout in activism. And obviously, because issues that many activists are taking care of are issues that should have been taken care of by governments and states, and it's not being done. So the burden is on us. But I think it's important to also take a deep breath many times and allow ourselves some peace and quiet. Otherwise, burnouts happen like this. And I just want to finish up by saying that, as I said in the beginning, or right before we began, it's been really difficult. Although I'm in a state of I'm in a privileged position. In many ways, it's still been very difficult for me mentally in the last couple of days to see what's going on here, especially in terms of discourse, extremism, a lot of hate and fear. And I've had some really challenging last couple of days being able to cope with what is going on here, and felt a little bit helpless. So being in an environment like this with people that are doing the exact opposite is inspiring. It really is. And it's very important to participate in such networks and to hear what others are doing, and to support each other as well, and to learn. So thank you very, very much to everyone here. Really, your work is important and is valued. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's a pleasure for us to have you here, to have also here as a guest speaker. And your work is really inspirational. Thank you so much. Next one is Sima Rajput. Sima, please make it short. Please, your final words.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Carlos. My final words would always be that together, when we start to climb stairs, the distance becomes shorter and speed takes up. So together we need to move together towards this, and always remember one thing, that it is our one planet. We all are born equal. We all have equal rights, and we should support equal rights. That's my final word. And leadership is about delegating.
Thank you so much, Sima. It's also a pleasure and a really honor to have you as a member of GCIPP, and of course to hear from your amazing work. Next one we have Kekasha Basu. Please make sure your final words.
Sure. Yeah, I would just say that and reiterate that change never occurs on its own. You need to make it happen the way you want it. And that is our mantra at Green Hope Foundation. And especially now, as we come out of this pandemic pause, it's so important that we pledge to build a new normal that's based on collaboration, on multilateralism, so that we can truly create a just, equitable, and resilient future where no one is left behind. We have made our choice now, and I really hope that that choice is echoed all around the world.
Thank you so much, Kekash, and you're inspirational as always. Thank you for your amazing work and advocacy, and I'm really excited to hear more about you in the future and your working about Green Hope. Thank you. So with this, we finally finished our 2-day event of women in leadership roles are looking to the present. We have been in a 2-day journey where you have the opportunity to hear from amazing female leaders from across the globe, from New York to Canada to South Africa to India. And this is all possible thanks to one thing, and it's all about respect, help each other out, teamwork, and be civilizing and empowering women. So I will also have my final words, but I want my lovely co-chair to also give us her final words. And again, make it short, please.
I will make it short. A huge, huge, huge thank you to everyone for joining us. And we look forward to having many more of these events. Please check out our website and social media, share it with everybody. And I hope all of you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you may be. Thank you so much for inspiring me today.
Thank you to all of you, to our amazing guest speakers of today and yesterday. It was a pleasure for United Change International to host such an amazing group of female leaders from across the globe. We are really, really happy to have your support and to have you joining us yesterday and today. My great admiration and respect to all of you for your amazing work and your amazing advocacy. Without you, this world wouldn't be the same. Thanks to you, the world is changing. Thanks to everyone who is joining us. And soon we will send you an email with the links of the recording. Thank you all very much. And remember, we need to stick together. We need to work together, and we need to achieve together. By doing it alone, we are never going to get anywhere. If we get together, we not only changing the world, but we are changing society once and for all. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much, Carlos.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Take care.
everyone. Thank you. Thank you for
Bye.
hosting us.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for having us. Thank you.